1912 was an interesting year indeed. Not only did we have a rift in the Republican Party like talked about not too long ago, but we welcomed not one, but two new states into the Union, New Mexico and Arizona. And in really quick succession too. New Mexico gained statehood on the 6th of January 1912, and Arizona followed just over a month later on February 14th, 1912. Valentine's Day, how lovely. The people of the Arizona Territory as well as the New Mexico Territory wanted statehood before 1912 and even tried to join the Union as late as 1906 when New Mexico proposed that Arizona join it by combining the territories into one large state, a proposal that Arizona voters rejected. But these territories were fighting for statehood long before even that, with their quest beginning way back in 1850. So why did it take so long? Well, the answer to that is the same as why we don't see progress on a lot of things: money and politics. You see, these two territories were the Wild West in more ways than just cowboys and gunfights. It was also an area that was a sort of tax haven for big railroad and mining interests. Fearing that statehood would mean having to pay state tax, these interests lobbied hard against statehood whenever it was brought up and spread fear of high taxes to the citizens of these territories. Cattle barons were also against the idea of statehood, as it would mean an end to their free access to public lands. But of course, it wasn't all big business's fault. The citizens of these territories did not express much interest in joining the Union early on, with them even voting down statehood a few times. Additionally, one year, the legislators of New Mexico dissolved the constitutional convention for lack of delegates. And of course, the hurdles of statehood were not just internal. Many Easterners fought against their statehood too, as they feared the political power of the would-be voting population, particularly when it came to New Mexico. They believed these territories to be too Catholic and too Hispanic, fearing the influence of Mexican culture on the politics of the Union as a whole. At the time, around the 1870s to 1880s, 90% of the population was non-white and/or Hispanic, and less than 10% spoke English. This was also the reason why Arizona did not want to be admitted into the Union with New Mexico. Arizonans feared that their interests would be overlooked, as the population of New Mexico would drown them out when it came to the voting booth. On top of all of this, Republican states were largely against these two joining, as they would very likely be joining as typically Democratic states, thus making it harder for them to win any national elections and generally lose power in the House and Senate. But thanks to evolving public attitudes, both inside and outside territories, as well as the continuing progressive movement, these barriers to statehood would gradually lower. Additionally, after a few decades of economic growth and Easterners moving to the New Mexico territory and so changing the cultural and political side of the territory, many old gripes about admission were no longer valid. And so, 62 years and dozens of authorization bills later, these states officially joined the Union as two separate states. The more conservative Constitution of New Mexico balanced out the more liberal Constitution of Arizona, thus protecting the political interests of both voting populations, as well as maintaining political balance in the Greater Union. And because they balanced each other out, it ensured that both would be admitted as states rather than one or the other. As statehood for New Mexico and soon Arizona was announced by President Taft, there was much rejoicing for the two new states.